You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
All right, let's talk about the stupidity that's going on all across the country. This happened yesterday. The Texas Senate, this is Philip Lewis tweeted this here. The Texas Senate passed a bill to eliminate a requirement that public schools teach that the KKK is morally wrong. That same bill dropped studying Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech as a curriculum requirement. Now in Oklahoma, the State Board of Education, they passed an emergency rule on House Bill 1775 banning critical race theory. Y'all, it wasn't even being taught in Oklahoma schools. Other rules implemented include, check this out, parents are permitted to inspect school curriculum. Okay. Teachers who violate rules could face suspension of their teaching certificate. I told y'all what's going on here. These crazed, deranged white people, these white conservatives are going nuts. They're trying to group everything under critical race theory, and it's idiotic. But you see what's going on. The Texas bill and its neighbor in Oklahoma, their actions is causing them to have impact far greater than so-called critical race theory. Carlisha Williams Bradley is the only Oklahoma State Board of Education member who voted against these particular rules. She joins us right now. Take us inside the room. What was the conversation like with your fellow board members who were debating critical race theory when it's not even being taught in Oklahoma schools?
No, you know, we had the board meeting and there were several parents who signed up to speak. You only have 8 individuals who are able to make it on that docket. And many of the comments related critical race theory, compared it to teaching and talking about race and privilege in school as bullying. They talked about these discussions on race and racism lead to things such as genocide in other countries. I mean, the concepts that these parents and the fear-mongering that went into this discussion was just completely outlandish. And when it came time for the board to vote, my fellow board members were silent. I shared about the fact that many of the comments that were made aren't even things that are taught in a K-12 classroom. When we're talking about critical race theory and not truly understanding the definition, placing everything under that umbrella. And what we're really saying is that we are not comfortable having conversations about race and racism or teaching our true, accurate history. And this is an act of a censure of our history teachers, of our teachers in the classroom. And for us in Oklahoma, administrators, teachers, even myself, I didn't get the final version of those rules until 30 minutes before the meeting. So this is happening swiftly, and it is happening in the dark.
And just to put this thing in perspective, wasn't it just in 2018 when Oklahoma started teaching the Tulsa race massacre in Oklahoma schools? So it took all those years, almost 100 years, boy, but they moved real fast on this one.
Yes. And it's so interesting, the energy that surrounded Tulsa. Just a month ago, we're celebrating the centennial, not celebrating, but commemorating the centennial. A spotlight is on our history and telling this truth. And many of the school districts began to adopt new curriculum that was developed. And so now here comes House Bill 1775. And while some individuals are saying, oh, just teach the standards and you will be fine, it's the consequences attached to that. When you talk about making a student feel uncomfortable, to feel anguish or guilt, and there being a penalty of your teaching certificate, and even further in the consequences, school districts could lose accreditation, which means losing all of their state funding. So there are so many things that are attached to the fear that is surrounding this bill, the fact that of the hundreds of education laws that were passed, that this was the one the only one that we needed to create emergency rules for that steps past that public comment process. So not only, you know, when we think about finally getting to speak the truth and putting that in the standards, it's 3 steps forward and 4 steps back for us here in Oklahoma. And I'm just deeply concerned at where we've landed, and especially in being the only person to voice dissent at this board.
And the thing that we are seeing, and this is what people have to realize, when you look at that Texas bill, when you look at what these fools in Tennessee have been trying to do, how they've been trying to change the textbooks as well, the real deal, these folks do not want race. They don't want diversity. They don't want any of this stuff being taught. And their strategy is to put everything under this critical race theory umbrella.
Correct. I mean, and it's interesting, you know, even when you look at the bill for Oklahoma, it doesn't say critical race theory in the bill. It says that you can't talk about meritocracy, that you can't speak on hard work ethic and it being related to somebody's race or identity, that you can't make people feel anguish, guilt, or any type of fear in regards to their race or their gender. So there's coded language in there, but underneath all of it is the ability to silence conversations about race, to silence conversations about the truth in our history. And it is an organized movement. As many people that have reached out to me since the rules passed, it is our community oftentimes reacting to the circumstances. But to be honest with you, the conservatives were organized already to be on that agenda, to speak at this meeting. They were sending hundreds of emails to the board members days before we got to this vote. So I just really encourage, especially as we look across the country and this is happening rapidly, we must organize and we must elevate our voices.
Well, but you got to realize, I mean, this has been driven by Fox News, by conservative talk radio. That's what's been going on here. And so it is a trumped up fake conversation, and that's what it is, pure and simple.
True. You're right. I mean, and it's a conversation that's not built on truth. And even when you try to approach the conversations about critical race theory not being taught in school at all, I now see, now that we have passed these rules, there's another surge of many of the conservative think tanks who are saying, capture screenshots, do whatever you send reports to the State Department about these teachings in schools. They are on a mission to find anything possible to continue to ignite the flame of this fear and really a false conversation. But it has become the center of attention, especially in a state like Oklahoma that isn't even funding education properly. While we're sitting here talking about what you can't teach, we're not even funding public education to the degree in which we should. So that it is really smoke and mirrors, but it is also for us in our state that just finally began to reckon with our past, a critical and pivotal point to where we have to say, not here, not now. We need to do something and we need to see something change.
All right, then. Well, look, keep up, the fight. That's what it entails, and I know it must be lonely being the only voice dissenting. But remember, it was Congresswoman Barbara Lee who was the lone voice voting against that war in Iraq, and she was hailed as a fearless leader a decade later. And so sometimes you got to do it by yourself when others don't want to stand up.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Carlisha Williams Bradley, thanks a lot. All right, folks. Look at my panel here. Teresa, I want to start with you. We need to understand what it's about coming down the pipe here. What you're having is, and people don't understand what's going on. You can have all the black folks in Atlanta, Republicans control the legislature in Georgia. You got black folks who are in Houston, but you got Republicans controlling the legislature in Austin, Texas. You got in your state, black folks in Philadelphia, but you got Republicans who are controlling the legislature in the state capitol. That's what for all the folk who love talking about local control, no, they only believe in that when they are in power local. They want to control everything happening in these cities. They want to stifle black power.
Absolutely. You should see the amount of disproportionate, not only laws, but strongholds that they have on certain conditions here in the city of Philadelphia. But again, I think Republicans are always thinking about the long game. So they, kind of gave up on local elections in some of these areas in the Commonwealth, and they have been focused on statewide appeal. And I think that same message and that same strategy has been working across different states where they're doing the exact same thing in the exact same playbook. So I think it's really incumbent up to us, local elected officials that are African American, to strive for those statewide positions and to ensure that their base is not only focused on local issues, but stronger statewide relations, because we honestly wouldn't have some of these issues that we are today if they were in positions on a statewide basis.
It's all about power. It's all about control, Mustafa, and that's what the Republicans are doing.
Yeah, it has always been about power. And this is politics. Folks know that they don't have any major policy to run on in 2022 or 2024 that we've seen so far. So they go back to these old, things that they can try and whip people up about and get folks to get in line with what the Republican Party thinks that it currently stands for, or what it does stand for, because they're the ones that are supporting this. So we know what the game is. We have to be very concerned, though, that there's the culling of teachers that will happen, where the subjectiveness of being able to say, well, you said this, which was out of step, so you're no longer there. And as we lose good teachers, we hurt Black and brown students who desperately need to have folks who look like them, who they can connect with. So you've got the two different dynamics that are going on. You've got the politics and the power that's going on, and then you've also got the silencing of teachers that are willing to tell the truth about the history of our country.
Ben?
I'm just thinking about how much effort that they go through to ensure that two things. They have a boogeyman, like Mustafa was saying. It's a cyclical outrage. It's a seasonal outrage. In a few months, we'll be outraged over the war on Christmas, even though there's no such thing. Republicans are professional propagandists. They've mastered the art of the talking point, and they understand how to maintain and sustain outrage between elections. That's what they're good at. The second thing is that they're absolutely committed to making sure that the history of this country is never told by the people who have been on the receiving end of this country's power. And so the oppressors never want the history told by the oppressed.
Look, folks, just understand what's going on here. Look, we're trying to warn you in advance. It's going to be more of this happening.
Folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just 1 moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.